Hello guys, a warm greetings to everyone who's watching this video today. So this is my part 1 climatology grade 12 geography. So you'll refer to my previous video where I was doing introduction on grade 12 climatology as a whole. So today our main focus will only be on mid-latitude cyclone together with tropical cyclone. So we'll just be looking on the differences, on their occurrence, on the cells where they occur, just everything about mid-latitude and a tropical cyclone. So it's also an introductory video. And then as we move forward, we'll also be looking on the mid-latitude cyclone in detail, then we'll go to tropical cyclone in detail. So today it's only about introduction between these two low pressure systems. Okay, so you remember from our previous video that we said we have two low pressure systems, which we also call them cyclones, because when we talk about a low pressure, that does mean a cyclone. And then these two cyclones, it is your mid-latitude cyclone together with a tropical cyclone. So now we'll just firstly look at the occurrence. For example, a mid-latitude cyclone occurs between 40 degrees and 60 degrees. I'm going to show you that on our tricellular circulation, in which we did in grade 11. And then secondly, we have a tropical cyclone which occurs between 5 degrees and 30 degrees latitudes. So we'll also look that on our global air circulation. So just a minor revision or recap of our tricellular circulation. I said on my previous video, if you want to know more about tricellular circulation, or if you want to know everything on tricellular circulation, there are three things that you need to focus on. Firstly, you must know the pressure belts, and we said there are four pressure belts. Is the equatorial low pressure, which is found at 0 degrees, and then secondly, we have a subtropical high pressure, which is found at 30 degrees latitude, and then thirdly, we have our subpolar low pressure at 60 degrees, and then lastly, we have our polar high at 90 degrees. So both of these pressure belts, they are found in both hemispheres, which is the southern hemisphere together with your northern hemisphere. And then secondly, I said you also need to know the type of cell that we found between each lines of latitude. And there are three of those cells which are already given on this tricellular diagram. So firstly, we have our Hartley cell, which is found between 0 to 30 degrees. We have our Ferrel cell between 30 to 60 degrees. And then lastly, here at the bottom, we have what we call our polar cell. So here is the cell also on our northern hemisphere. So there are just three of them. And then lastly, we said you also need to know the type of winds that you find between each of the cells. For example, between 30 or between 0 to 30 degrees, both hemispheres, we are going to have what we call the tropical easterlies, or we can say the trade winds. So you can use any of these terms. It's just the same wind. It's either tropical easterlies or the trade winds. So now let's see why are they called tropical easterlies or the trade winds. Okay, firstly, you have this very important term that we not need to overlook it, which is tropical. So every time you hear the word tropical, it just refers to places that are nearer or closer to the equator. Which means now your 30 degrees and 0 degrees and northern hemisphere together with 30 degrees and 0 degrees southern hemisphere, those are referred to as the tropical regions. So each and every wind that will occur between these areas, it will be called tropical. And then secondly, we have this term which says easterlies. Remember, in geography, we name things based on where they come from and not where they are going to. For example, we call this wind easterlies because they are from the east and they are coming towards the west. So that's why we just use the term easterlies. It's because they come from the east. So please always know that. And then it's also called the trade winds because it's used to assist our travelers long time ago. They used to gain direction, or this wind used to help them when they were trading as they were moving. But the most important term that we can have for now is that the tropical easterlies, which are found between 30 and 0 degrees. And then secondly, we have the westerlies. The westerlies are found between 30 degrees and 50 degrees in both hemispheres, the northern and the southern hemisphere. And remember, I said we call things in geography based on where they come from. So here we have our westerlies. So that tells you that this wind is from the west and is moving towards the east. So it cannot be called easterlies because it's going to the east. We only call it westerlies because it's come from the west. And then the last one, we have the polar easterlies. So now you'll know or you'll see the difference. Remember the first wind that we talked about, it was the tropical easterlies. You remember the term tropical? I said the reason we call it tropical is because it's closer to the equator, and these areas which are close to equator are called tropical regions. And now we have another easterly, which means this wind is from the east, but it's no longer the tropical easterlies. So what do we call this wind now? It's called the polar easterly. And the reason we call it the polar, it is because it's found near the pole. The North Pole with the polar easterlies, and also the South Pole we have the polar easterlies. So these are three most important winds that you need to know, which I believe that you did this in grade 11. So the reason we are touching all of this is because it's very important, and it is the first step for you to understand a tropical cyclone and a mid-latitude cyclone. Okay, then secondly, we are going to do a comparison between these two weather systems, or between these two low pressure systems, or between these two cyclones. So we have our mid-latitude cyclone, and then secondly we have a tropical cyclone. Now let's see what are the differences. So we also refer to this diagram. So the first and the most important with the mid-latitude cyclone, we look at the occurrence. Where does a mid-latitude cyclone occurs? And then they say it occurs between 40 to 60 degree lines of latitude, both in the northern and the southern hemisphere. Let's look on the diagram. Look at the name first. It's a mid-latitude, which means we're focusing on the lines of latitude. All these latitudes ranging from the equator to the last one, which is 90 degrees, which means between these latitudes, there are latitudes where a mid-latitude occurs. And which are those? Now, you look at the name, it's a mid. If you hear the term mid, it tells you in the middle or at the center or in between. Which means now a mid-latitude cyclone will be found in the middle latitudes. And which ones are our middle latitudes? It's between 40 degrees to 60 degrees. Which means in which cell? On your Ferrel cell. So on the Ferrel cell, we're 40 degrees and 60 degrees, and that's where you're going to find the mid-latitude cyclone. I hope you can also see where does the name mid-latitude come from. It comes from the mid-latitudes, which means it's the middle, and also the lines of latitude or the horizontal line. So that's where it occurs. And then we move to tropical cyclone. Now, a tropical cyclone, it occurs between 5 to 30 degrees north and south of the equator. Remember, what did I tell you about the tropical easterlies? I said the tropical areas, it's all the areas that are closer to the equator. So now we have a tropical cyclone, which also tells you that this cyclone or this low pressure system, it occurs in places that are nearer the equator, because these are the places we call them the tropical areas. So now where are you going to find it? It's from 5 degrees. So remember the equatorial low pressure, which is 0 degree. And then we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. It does not occur there. But it starts occurring from 5 degrees going down until 30 degrees. And why does it not occur between 1 to 4 degrees? It's because there is a lack of something called a colony form. There is a statement, it says, this tropical cyclone does not occur between 0 to 4 degrees due to a lack of Coriolis force. You remember from grade 11, we said a Coriolis force, it's a force that deflects wind in both hemispheres. Which means now in both hemispheres, we are not going to have a tropical cyclone occurring between 0 to 4 because there's no Coriolis force. Which tells you that in order for this to form, we need the presence of a Coriolis force. And we only have a Coriolis force from 5 degrees going down. Then the second difference, it says it influences the weather in the ferret cell, a mid-latitude cyclone. I also told you that a mid-latitude cyclone occurs between 40 to 60. And if you look at the cell in this latitude, you can see this with our ferret cell. Which means once it has occurred, the weather in the ferret cell will be influenced or will be changed by this mid-latitude cyclone. And then opposite, tropical cyclone, it occurs between 5 to 30, which means now a tropical cyclone will influence the weather in which cell? The Hardy cell. Because between 5 to 30 we have our Hardy cell. So this one will be found between 5 to 30, which is your Hardy cell, and then the mid-latitude, it is between 40 to 60, which is a ferret cell. And then this last cell, the polar cell, you can see we do not talk about any cyclone occurring here. So this polar cell, the northern and the southern, they have nothing to do with the tropical cyclone and the mid-latitude cyclone. And then the next difference, they say it is driven by the westerly winds. Remember where do you find the westerly winds? You only find the westerly winds or the westerlies between 30 to 60 degrees. Just like on this diagram, between 30 to 60 degrees, that's where we're going to find our westerly. Which means now, once this mid-latitude cyclone has occurred in this Hardy cell or in this mid-latitude, it will only be moved by the westerly or the westerly wind. So that's why they say it is driven back. It's more like the transport. What pushes it? This is your westerly winds or the westerly. And then now with the tropical cyclone, it is driven by the easterly or the trade winds. Remember where do we find them? We find them between 30 to 0 degrees. And these are your tropical easterlies or your trade winds. Which means once it has occurred in the tropical cyclone, it will be moved by the tropical easterlies. And then the next difference, it's moved from west to east in a westerly direction. So the lab asked me this question, or you can just respond in this way. Maybe they will ask saying, in which direction does a mid-latitude cyclone move? You can respond to any of this. You can say it is from west to east. Remember, it is driven by your westerlies. So a mid-latitude cyclone will move from west towards east. Or you can just say an easterly direction. Easterly direction, which means it's going to the east. And then now with a tropical cyclone, it says it's moved from east to west. It's just the opposite. Or in a westerly direction, not easterly. It's westerly direction. I will give these notes before I send them to you. So with a tropical cyclone, it's moved from your east and then it's come towards the west. So you can just say it's west to east, or you can just say in a westerly direction. It's just the opposite. And it's because it's influenced by the tropical easterly. And the tropical easterly, you can see them from the east towards the west, or the trade winds. And then the next difference, it affects the west of continent. And what is that? It's a mid-latitude cyclone. Remember that's a mid-latitude cyclone. It approaches from the west. Which means now, if it's approached from the west, for example, let's say in this area we have a mid-latitude cyclone. So now, when this mid-latitude cyclone approaches this South American continent, the first part of this continent that will be affected, it is the west. So that's why it says it affects the west of the continent. Because a mid-latitude cyclone approaches from the west, then definitely it is going to affect the west of the continent. But now looking at the tropical cyclone, it's also the opposite. With the tropical cyclone, they say it affects the east of the continent. And it's because it approaches from the east. Let's also give an example. Let's say here we have your tropical cyclone approaching South America. So what is going to happen? If it is here, the first part that should be affected, it is your eastern part of South America. So these are the most important differences that you need to know. Is the names, that's how do we have this name, how did they come about? It's because of where they occur. You also need the cell in which they occur, and then you also need to know the winds that influences these cyclones, and then you also need to know which part is being affected. But we're also going to do this in detail, and then let's move to the last part. And then here I have a world map again, which just summarizes everything we're talking about. So in this world map, they're showing you where the mid-latitude cyclone occurs and where do your tropical cyclone occurs. So now we have a key right here at the bottom. All these black arrows, they indicate a mid-latitude cyclone track, and then these green arrows, they indicate a hurricane track or a tropical cyclone track. So now let's look where the mid-latitude cyclone occurs. We find them here between 40 to 60. So all these arrows, this is where we have this mid-latitude cyclone occurring in the world, both in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. And then secondly, we have our tropical cyclone and the hurricane. Hurricane, remember, it is between 5 to 30, not between 0, because there's no correspondence. Just like on this diagram, you're not going to see any arrow or any green arrow starting from the equator. They all start after the equator, because they do not occur on the equator or 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees due to a lack of correspondence. So it's only from 5 degrees going down. Okay, so both on the southern and also the northern hemisphere, we have this tropical cyclone. And then our main focus will be here in South Africa on how does a mid-latitude cyclone together with a tropical cyclone affect us. So these are the things we need to know, which we're also going to do in detail. And then, as we also said on the previous slide, that this cyclone or the tropical cyclone, it affects the east of continents. I hope this is also evident on this diagram. You can see these arrows approaching Africa from, and then with the mid-latitude cyclone, they approach from the west, which means when they affect South Africa, the first part that will be affected is the Western Cape, or what we love to refer to as Cape Town. Okay, then tropical cyclone is also given different names in different parts of the world. For example, let's look at this. For example, if you're at North America, they do not refer to tropical cyclone as a tropical cyclone. Instead, they use the term hurricane. That is why even on the key here, they say a hurricane track. So to not be confused, tropical cyclone and the hurricane is the same thing. The impact is the same, occurrence is the same. It's just that in different parts of the world, they're given different names. So in North America, we refer to them as hurricane. And then when you go to Asia, it's referred to them as the typhoons or typhoons. That's depending how they call it. So we have the typhoon in Asia, and then when you go to Australia or the East Australia, it's called Willies. And then when you go to Africa, or let's just say South Africa, Madagascar, we call them the tropical cyclones. So these are the most important things, guys. For you to move forward, you need to have this basic knowledge. If you do not have this basic knowledge about tropical cyclone and mid-latitude cyclone, you might struggle moving forward. So just know where do they occur, in which cell they occur, what do you call them in different parts of the world, and that's all. But with a mid-latitude cyclone, it's just given different names, but not in different parts of the world. For example, you can say it's a mid-latitude cyclone, or it can also be called an extratropical cyclone, and all of that, which we are also going to do in details. But for now, just know the names for a tropical cyclone. Until we meet again, guys, next time. So do not forget, I'm going to upload these notes and make sure that they are available to you. And then next time, as we meet, we'll be talking about a mid-latitude cyclone in detail, and that will be part 2 of my video. Thank you. See you next time.